we go. I'll hand it over to the host.
Okay, so I was just going to like ask people what questions they had, and like since Emily, you're here, like do you want to like do you have any questions that you want to start with?
Here we go. No, I'm not on mute. Um, oh, dogs. Sorry. Um, no, I don't think I do right off the bat. I mean, I went to one of these trainings through my school, which was really helpful, and I just did the Washington mental health care one. But I think I'm just more confused about like, I don't know. I mean, I know the huge process that you just went through to try to get your licensing to go through, and it's going to be different because it's not from another country and stuff. But I think I'm like a little worried about that, and um yeah, I just like it's crazy because it's like you want to get going on all of it, but also we can't really actually get going on any of it until we're graduated and until we have our transcripts.
Uh, so if I do understand, you already applied, right? That's what we discussed about. You did send in your application for the LM.
No, I mean I have this stuff and I've been working on it. I just am filling out the like where my different classes go and the thing, but they're not even gonna do anything with that until after I have my full transcripts, right?
So I think I don't know if Hannah wants to answer that, but
Sure.
I think if you do send it in earlier, it does put you kind of like
At the
on the wait list of where you fall. So it
okay,
does give you a head start. So
great.
yeah. So Hannah did mention that she sent it in like 3 months earlier before she got her transcripts.
Okay, great. Okay, cool. Because I'm almost done with it. I just need to finish it up and turn it in. And then did she just send it in? Like, do I do that electronically or do I just send the whole thing in a big envelope?
So I did it electronically.
Okay.
I don't know, Hannah, are you here?
Yeah, so I did it online. You can turn the application and fill out. It sounds like I have to do the course, filling out what course.
Okay.
Did you? Okay. Did you get that?
Kind of, yeah.
I think we lost Hannah. I know she's in the woods, and so
Oh,
that was the challenge. And it sounds like so, Lakshmi, you filled yours out
Yeah,
online.
so yeah, I can tell you what she helped me with as well, right? So I did fill it in online, and what happened is that they don't have like a section for curriculum and your practicum stuff.
mhm,
It's only the courses, right? So
mhm.
they do email you back asking you to fill the form again when they need,
Okay.
if and when they need it, right? But
Okay.
what Hannah did mention is that like most of her classmates did have to like fill that form, which you are kind of like you mentioned you're working on, right? The code
Yeah.
and everything. They did want it to be filled again and sent again,
Okay.
the email. Uh,
Okay.
so I think most of her classmates had to do it. I had to do it.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not sure why, because when you are filling it online, you do put in your courses against like all the area,
Yeah.
but they still want you to do it like in a form and send it
Wait,
back to them. Yeah.
okay. Well, I kept all my syllabi. Like I have all of that information and it should be as easy as possible. So
Uh,
Sending it in 3 months before graduation is possible instead of having to wait for graduation and then applying. So that sounds like something that you don't have to wait for. So I hope that
right.
that's good news.
Yes, I'll just get that in as soon as possible then.
and I think what really worked immediately after sending the transcripts is calling them. And that was kind of a suggestion that I think Rafaela mentioned long time back, and also Hannah did mention it like about a few months ago.
Hmm.
Me personally, in my process, just calling them only worked. Like they couldn't, like they did not match my transcripts to the application, in fact.
Wow.
So I had to like
Good.
very,
Excellent.
they actually were like very responsive. So that way it did help a lot. But one of the suggestions that Hannah did mention is like calling.
Okay. That's great.
Yeah. And they do tell you like where they are in the process, what's happening, like what does a timeline look like, and all of that. I don't think it really works according to the timeline, yes, but you do get like, a ballpark number of how many days you need to work, kind of thing. Yeah.
Okay, cool. That's great.
I see Tara joined us. Hello, Tara. We're just opening it up to questions that any attendees might have of the panel.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for doing this, first of all. I think it's just at the right time. So I don't have any questions right now. I'm just gonna sit back and just soak it in for now.
Lakshmi, do you mind reiterating what Emily just asked with the response?
Yeah, so I think what we were discussing with Emily is about like sending in your LMHC application like way ahead of time. It's okay to send it anytime actually. So uh, one of the things that Hannah did mention that she did that helped her was like sending it about like 3 months ago before she graduated. So it kind of puts you on like a list, and you don't start just after when you get your transcripts, right? You can always send in your transcript when you get them. And yeah, I'm lost about what her next question was. Yeah, we were talking about calling, right? Like once you send in your transcripts, I think calling them and like asking them if they have everything to start your application and all of that kind of really helped. So that was one of the things we were discussing about.
Yeah, so no delay in sending your application. Go ahead and send it anytime. You don't have to wait for graduation, and then calling to follow up, and then that they'll tell you where they're at in processing applications. So then you get a better timeline that's specific for that moment, rather than hearing from other people, oh, it took this long or it took that long. They'll tell you, right, specifically what they're doing at that moment.
I think one of the things is they are very communicative, so definitely watching out for their emails. So I did mention that I sent in my application online, and one of the tips that Hannah had given me is that to kind of watch out for mails from them, because they do ask you to fill in the areas of study and the courses that go with it in the application all over again, although you do fill it in when you're submitting an online application. So they did ask me to do that as well. So yeah.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, I moved to a better spot. But the other thing is once you submit your application, they might have you fill out the course list afterward. But then the next piece, once you send in your transcripts, I put this kind of in the handout that we worked on. But when you make that phone call, the first person you speak to will say, I have no information. You kind of need to push past that first person and ask to speak to somebody who works in the documentation department, because my transcript was there the whole time. They just had it in the wrong place. And that happened to a lot of different folks that I graduated with. So you will get the first person who will say, I have no information for you, and then ask to speak to somebody in the documentation department so they can, wherever they had to move it to, so they could continue to process it, because they had it from June, but hadn't processed it until September. So really bothering them and asking to speak to somebody who knows what's going on.
Do either of you have any other questions, or we could ask Rafaela to like help us with the private practice process?
Yeah, I'm super interested in the private practice process because that's kind of what I'm looking at now. I'm kind of considering doing like if I found the right thing, like maybe doing a very part-time group so that I have some that's more steady, but I'm looking at private practice mostly.
Yeah, we can go into that. So nobody submitted any questions through the Google form, like any other questions? Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can just like dive into that. Um, so basically I like kind of I like wrote up some notes and I sectioned them off. But the kind of like basic stuff is, you know, the applying for figuring out, first of all, if you want to do like a PLLC or a sole proprietorship, or like what is the structure of your practice that you want to have. I have a PLLC. I've heard that it's like more expensive to have an PLLC. I'm not really sure of the like you know, the breakdown of that or like why. I have some colleagues who have sole proprietorships and like it works for them, and I don't really know the difference, honestly. I just thought that you had to get a PLLC when I started, so I just did that. But the difference between an LLC and a PLLC is just that the PLLC is like a professional limited liability company. So you don't, a regular LLC is more for like selling goods and stuff like that, as opposed to services. And then, yeah, your business license. So, okay, there's about to be a big noise because my friends are coming home with another dog and it's going to be loud. But anyway, the business license. So you want that from the city that you're going to be working out of, and then the state. And then the NPI number, getting your NPI number, and then your EIN number from the IRS. Can you apply for your NP? I think so. Yeah, national provider. I think so. Yeah, right, Christine?
Yeah, I think that I got mine before I got my license. And so I do think that like some of these other steps that you can apply for them ahead of time and, you know, not have to wait.
You can actually get your EIN right now. Like I already got mine. I already got mine.
Fabulous. Thank you, Emily.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, like getting the malpractice insurance, like just getting that set up. And I had gotten through HSPO, they had one for new graduates that was like 60% off for the first year, and then 40% off for year 2 and 20% off for year 3. It kind of like, you know, that was like a nice deal. I don't know if they still have that, but HSPO is the malpractice limited liability insurance that I got. And then, yeah, like a bank account would be helpful. It's not like you don't need to, but I think that it's really helpful. Just having like a separate account that like all of the payments go to. And then it's easier to track for things like, you know, taxes and stuff like that. And then a way to like, you know, find a system that works for you. There's like all different kinds of systems that, you know, you can use, but Simple Practice is definitely the gold standard. And that's the one I use. It's like $109 a month, but it's worth all of it. I would pay more for it. It does like all of the bookkeeping, all of the appointments. It gives all the appointment reminders. You like do all the paperwork through there. All of the payment. It's like that's the best part is like I don't have to get payment at the end of each session or anything like that. It does automatic payments, and it's like it's like you just have their credit card enrolled, and then whatever their fee is, like when you make that appointment and the appointment is over, it like charges it to their card all automatically, and then it creates the super bills for you, and like it's really amazing. But yeah, figure out which one you want to use. And those are like the main pieces of like the kind of logistical stuff to get it very like set up. The rest of the stuff here is like about like the intake forms and the like, you know, setting up your profiles on Psych Today and stuff, and deciding what your schedule you want your schedule to be, and your niche and your payment model and stuff like that. But do you guys does anybody have questions about that, those like bigger pieces?
Yeah, I wanted to ask about S Corp.
Oh, S Corp, right.
about how that might be a better option than an LLC. I didn't buy into that, but
I am an S corp, and so I mean, basically, you are your practice, and your practice is you when you're an S corp. The rule for an S corp is that you have to have one employee, and so one employee beyond yourself. And so that is, it could be somebody who you're even working with, 4 hours a week as a bookkeeper or something like that, but they have to be your employee. So that was the rule, at least when I established back in 2009. So maybe there are some changes, but and then the other thing is that you have to pay yourself a reasonable salary. And so there's no true definition of what a reasonable salary is. So if it's, $2,000 an owner draws a month, or if it's a full, wage, I would say that in general, taking owner draws, if you're an S corp, will save you a bunch in taxes, but there might be reasons why you want to be an official employee. So things like student loan forgiveness, you have to be an employee to be able to. So it's kind of like, are you an owner and taking owner draws, or are you an employee and getting paid as an employee? So the basic rule was, and S corp also protects your personal property much more than some of the other like limited liability companies can protect you a bit, but then an S corp really has the most separation between your own assets and then the business assets. It really is, even though you're your business and your business is you, there's just more protections in place. So those are some of the reasons for why I chose to be an S corp, and that I had an employee at the time. So I don't know if the rules have changed about that, but that's definitely something that we can get a few notes on, is like PLLC, LLC versus S corp for sure.
thank you. I have one more question. I do have liability insurance from ACA that renews every year. Would that be sufficient, or would you strongly recommend like Hedges BO?
Is that general liability insurance? Because okay. Yeah, so general liability insurance you'll maintain if you're renting a space, or if you have, it's more about the environment that you're renting or where you're seeing people, versus the malpractice insurance is for anything that involves the care that you're providing. So if people are only working with IHI clients, like some people are just taking the summer to kind of figure it out, then if you're only working with IHI clients, our malpractice insurance covers you 100%. As soon as you start seeing your own clients through your own business, that's when you need your business liability. You don't even really need general liability, because we also have general liability insurance. So it's only if you're like wanting to start having insurance, but I would say like save the money until you really need those pieces, because every bit matters when you're starting a new practice. Like, it can be very expensive, and so I'm like, save where you can. But yeah, so those are not the things that I would pick up until you really need them.
Okay, makes sense.
Uh,
Thank you.
yeah. Anybody else have opinions about that? Like, Hannah, you work with a group, right? So do you want to tell us a little bit about which pieces you have to maintain versus what your employer maintains?
Yeah, so it depends on the practice. Some practices will pay for your liability insurance or pay for continuing education credits. The place that I work for, what Rafaela was saying about the HBSO being, yeah, I paid $64 for the first year. So I have like, I believe it's a yeah, it depends on how much the aggregate is, but I do pay 64 for the whole year, so I pay for my liability insurance. And then the other thing is, if you are taking insurance, there is also a website that you sign up with that gives you need your NPI for, then that you can bill insurance through them. I'm gonna get the acronym mixed up. It's CAQH, I believe. And then that's the only thing I have to maintain through them, but it really depends on the practice. So some practices will just give you liability insurance, but mine does not. But very low cost for the first year was $64. That's about it as far as what I need to maintain outside of practice. Just liability insurance is all I need.
And
And so
what has it been like for you working for a small group practice? Like, are you getting paid what you wanted to be paid? Are you getting benefits? Like, how's that going for you?
I like it a lot because I didn't want to do like the startup cost of starting my own business and then other folks, and it depends on how you market. Like if you're a group practice, it's a lot easier to get clients, but if you just start right out with private practice, and what my colleagues have shared with me, that it's hard to kind of get clients right away, so it takes a minute to kind of ramp up. So that's why I chose to work for a practice because they load my schedule, they handle all of the billing. And basically, how most private practices work, if you work for a private practice, is they will give you a percentage. So, like for example, if my client's contracted with Regents and I work with insurance, and that particular practice gets paid out, I believe it's for my practice 150. They give me 55% of that and they keep the rest. And so a lot of times that's how private practices work, is they will give you half of how much the insurance company's paying out. It's called like a variable pay scale. That's not how everybody works. Sometimes there's salary, but that's not very often. Sometimes there's a flat hourly, but a lot of times it's that variable pay. Currently, I have one of the higher paying like group work for LMHCAs because I make about like 58 per hour, but generally like you'll find between like $20 and 45. So it really depends on the practice. It depends on if they take insurance or not. If you work with a practice that only does self-pay, you'll probably get more. But I liked it a lot because it was easy for me to get clients very quickly. I also have insurance through them, and typically they'll have better insurance plans because they're a larger practice. And what group practices have that private practice doesn't, is you can negotiate with insurance companies with a larger practice versus if you're on your own, you want to take insurance, they're likely not to give you as much. So that's kind of where I was. I didn't have enough money saved to be able to like start a practice. I mean, I would like to in the future, but I get really great health insurance. They're rolling out PTO time, and then I also get the Washington State sick time. So it depends on the practice you work for, but for me, it was important to get benefits, just because that's what was important to me. But
How many clients are you seeing in a week right now? Like, what's your caseload look like?
yeah, so that's also why I chose this place, because most places will want you to have between 25 and 30 clients per week to be at full time. The
I know.
practice I work for is 20.
Okay, that's kind
Yeah,
of
but
what I'm looking for.
yeah, they're actually hiring someone coming up soon. So if you would like to apply, it's called Northwest Council. It's out of Puyallup. I really like them, but they are hiring a telehealth
Okay,
person. Um, but yeah, I really like them. It's a group practice. Everyone's really sweet. But I actually see about 35 clients. You do get to set your own schedule, but some people come bi-weekly. So it's more like 35 folks, but I see 20 per week about
got it.
there, 20 to 25.
And you said it's called Northwest Council or
Yeah,
Northwest?
Northwest Council. Yep,
Great.
it's out of Puyallup, Washington.
Okay, great. And you're doing are you seeing clients out of there in person or are you doing telehealth?
Telehealth only,
Okay,
just because Puyallup's far for me.
yeah, that's kind of what I was feeling too. Okay, cool. That's really
Yeah,
great. Thank you.
yeah.
If I've done my job correctly, I've at least given you pause about whether or not you need to accept insurance. But it also is something that everybody should have their own navigation to figure out what's right for them. Like Hannah, we've talked about all of the like downsides of insurance, but then the group that you work with seems very reasonable in their approach. Can you tell us a little bit about like why you might not have worked with somebody else versus like why you're working with these folks? Like, is insurance or?
Yeah. So my supervisor is really excellent because kind of the way we talk about insurance is we chart in the way that insurance wants us to chart and are very protective over clients. But then when we're working with clients, we might use a bunch of different modalities. So it's kind of, I like working with them because they're open to a bunch of different things. And depending on the supervisor you get, my supervisor is very much like, this is what we need to do for insurance. This is how you need to bill for it. You need a diagnosis. But when you're doing treatment, like, these are human beings. This is how we're treating folks. So that's why I chose it, because otherwise there are other practices that rely more on the more like medical-based model of supporting folks. And that was just kind of having that freedom to be able to make my own schedule and also like talk to my supervisor about the way that I'm supporting folks, in that there wasn't a force to do like a certain modality or act a certain way. It was more of like, we're supporting human beings. Insurance needs these things to be able to allow us to treat them. And very protective about diagnoses. So talking to clients about, especially with diagnoses that could have issues later, and if it's on their chart, we just have discussion about whether or not the label is helpful. And that's just my personal, the way that I practice and why I chose to go there. But if you work with someone in a private practice that does self-pay, then it doesn't really matter as much. That's, yeah. But if you do work with insurance, they want charts a specific way. But my charts, as far as like treatment planning and charts, it's very vague for insurance. And then what we're working on in session is more of like my personal notes and kind of discussion about that, which my supervisor is really cool about. So that's why I like working with them.
And what's the best way that you found to learn how to do that kind of note taking? Because it's so different. Like filling stuff out for insurance stuff is so different than our notes that we've taken at IHI,
Yes.
and that's a bit of a struggle. I'm like kind of panicking about it in my head because I'm like, how the hell do you even write that? Like,
yeah, so it really is going to depend on your supervisor. And for my supervisor, she's very much like, you can just, if you're taking private insurance, it's different than if you're taking Medicaid. If you're taking Medicaid, they're going to want very specific check-ins. You're more likely to get audited if you work with Medicaid, just because the state wants to make sure that people are, yeah, they're a lot more rigid. So with private insurance companies, I was surprised to learn that you actually can do very vague notes. Like, for example, with the client who has generalized anxiety disorder, for example, or I diagnose them with that. For treatment goals, you can just say like, address symptoms of anxiety, and that's it. And this is not how everybody works. Like, it also can be very specific. Like, some folks I practice with do like the very rigid, like, here's the objective, here's the goal we're working on. So it really is a lot more. It depends on who you are, it depends on how much you want to charge, but if you, it kind of just depends on what you would like, because some folks are worried about like, what if, what if insurance audits me and there's an issue. But talking with my supervisor and with folks in the field, there's another thing that we kind of do when we work with couples, is because most insurance companies don't pay out for couples therapy. We assign somebody as a primary client, and this is like most practices do. They assign somebody as a primary client, and then you give them a diagnosis, and then you just kind of chart as if the person who shows up as a couple is a guest. So it's that's kind of, it depends on who you are though. Like, if you don't want to practice that way, that's totally okay. Like, if you prefer with giving more detail, but the practice I work with is more focused on like protecting clients and keeping things a little bit more vague.
That's so rare, because oftentimes it's like you abide by the insurance company's wishes or not, right? And so your company is willing to operate in a way that is respectful of the client and protective of the client, but then also allows them to use their insurance. I posted, this is my kind warning, but at the same time, it's like, starting a private practice, like has been mentioned, is not a small task. And so it's, even though I'm like, don't sign an insurance contract, you'll always lose against insurance companies. But that's a blanket statement. People day in, day out work fine with insurance companies, but there is a risk when you're working with them. Things like audits don't have to make any sense for why they do it. But I would ask Rafaela, so in starting a private practice, cash pay, right? How do you navigate things like medical insurance or other, like Hannah needed a benefits package, and like many of us do, right? So how did you navigate that piece, Rafaela?
Like the piece of not getting, because if you don't take insurance, then not getting a full caseload?
Not working for somebody else, so not having guaranteed benefits. And so, have you created your own benefits package for yourself? Are you purchasing healthcare off of the marketplace? What do you do for yourself, right?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was on the list, which I can just send. I can also just send the list over. But yeah, I have my own my health insurance through Kaiser. It's like $450 a month. And I have like I keep about like I put like 25% away of every paycheck I get. And then, you know, about 20% of that is for taxes and 5% of that is for like sick time or vacation time and stuff like that. It's like a fund for like when I need to take time off too. Um, but yeah, like I do all of the my benefits on my for myself on my own. Yeah.
How soon were you able to start doing that, or like as you were organically building a cash pay practice, like how were you able to, I almost never had enough money to save initially, you know, and in general, it's a struggle to feel like there's ever any surplus. So how were you able to get yourself on that schedule, or, you know, like, yeah, how did it work out for you?
Yeah, I mean, at first I was on like the Apple, like I was on free healthcare because I wasn't making enough money to like purchase healthcare. And so for like about a year I had free healthcare through the state. And then uh yeah, I think that to the point where I started to be able to actually save money, it was probably like a year and a half in. But you know, even from the start, I was really adamant about not about doing my like putting that at least 20% away of every paycheck I was putting. That 25% went up about, a year and a half to 2 years in, putting that extra bit away for like my own sick time and vacation. But yeah, I would say I have had colleagues who like kind of were like, oh, I don't need to like put the money away, like it's coming to me, they just were like, I'll figure it out when I get there. And like now they're still paying off, debt to the IRS for their taxes like years later. So just really from the start, even if you're just making $100 a week, like put $20 away a week for your
I would
taxes.
round it up to 30 so that you're not surprised at all. And then the other piece is to do projected payments each quarter on your taxes so that it chips away at your tax liability. And so if you at least have some projection to work with, then you can get going with quarterly payments. And then sometimes they owe you back, if you've overpaid it. But typically it will just mean that your total that you're paying at the end of the year is less traumatic. So
That happened to me this year. I got a payment back afterwards because also there's this person that I can link to the thing that I'll send you the list. But her name's like Jenny Girl Friday, I think that's like her tag. But she's like a tax pro for small businesses. And I went to like one of her workshops a couple years ago when I had first started the private practice. And she was like, especially for like these small businesses, especially when you're the one providing the services, like you are the service. So like literally so much more than we think can be deducted from taxes. Because if you can argue that you need to do the thing that you're spending money on in order to do the service that you're providing, like let's say like I could be like, I have to go on this like vacation because if I don't go on this vacation, if I can like argue this thing, obviously it can get to a point where it's ridiculous. But if you're smart about it, like you can really claim so much on your taxes when you're a small business owner who's providing the service yourself. So just remembering to like try to, You don't need to be giving all your money to the government.
And bare minimum things like professional clothes, or having your hair done, or like a massage, or like that's your own kind of paying for your own health care. So some of those pieces are things that you want to track. You want to track how much you spend in medications and supplements, and how much you give in charity, and all of those pieces that just will help you to have more itemized deductions. And so more itemized deductions on your taxes overall is going to be helpful for bringing down the total.
And that's why it's helpful to have that. I have like a business bank account and a business credit card attached to it. So I put everything that I spend that could be claimed as a deductible on my taxes on that credit card. And then I can go back to the statements and, if I needed to, and go through them with a tax agent, which is very unlikely. So just remember that you can deduct. A lot of people like are really stingy about it because they're so terrified of these people like coming in like guns blazing, and it's not the reality. But yeah, that's just a little.
Talking to the IRS is like how you were talking about talking to the Department of Health was like surprisingly helpful, or like non-traumatic. In general, when I have spoken to the IRS, they have been incredibly helpful, including like recently suggesting to me that IHI could have this filing fee forgiven. And they were like, would you like to ask orally for us to waive this fee? And it's like a prompt for me to say, yes, I would like you to waive this fee. And so they're like, I think that, maybe there's, one or two people out there who are pretty unreasonable, but vast majority of the IRS agents that I've spoken to throughout the years for nonprofit issues, for small business issues, they've been so incredibly helpful. And like, just because you have a tax liability that seems scary, that should not prevent you from talking to them, because then you're going to have a better opportunity to be able to, have a plan, or have somebody's help creating a plan if you did get into some issues that needed more help. But yeah, don't not call them if you have questions, or even just like, what is the best option for me? And they'll be like, here are the articles that you can read about this specific thing. So Eileen, you're an S Corp too, right? Did you have to prove that you had an employee aside from yourself? You're
I
muted.
just have to unmute.
Yeah, hi.
What a challenge that was.
Yeah.
No, I did not. And I didn't even know that was all somebody said is make yourself an S Corp. And I said, okay. And I did.
That's so interesting. Yeah, I had to prove that I had an employee when I originally filed, but you filed several years after me. So maybe they've removed that. I can always put it on my roster of things to answer. But Tara had that specific question about being an S Corp. And so far it's been decent for me. It seems like it's been decent for Eileen. That was not the biggest trouble that we've come across in the years of private practice.
And I wanted to add, and I kind of passed over it, but when you guys were talking about audits, if you take Medicaid, you're more likely to be audited than if you take another insurance. One of the counselors have the advantage of having CPT codes that match what they do. So insurance might not be as horrible, but it's still when when Melina came in wanting my client's diagnosis and all of her notes before they would authorize her any more sessions, and she had just relapsed, I didn't want to give it because I felt that was intrusive. And could they drop her or something? I mean, anyway.
Because you're not contracted with Molina, the rules of what you have to provide to Molina is different. So basically, if you contract with insurance companies, they're your boss. What they say goes. Then versus what did you give them anything? Did you offer to write a a summary letter or something like that. That's something that Eileen has done in the past when they ask for all of the notes instead of providing absolutely all of the notes, that she'll write a treatment summary or like a case summary and send that over instead. So then you can control the narrative, give the information that your client is comfortable sharing. So still like trying to appease a little bit, but without the overreach of like digging into client privacy. Hannah, did your people give you a template for how they wanted you to chart for when they were billing insurance?
Yes. So my practice gives like in simple practice, you can put little snippets. So they give you like just fill this in. And yeah, so they did give me a little bit of a template, but it is very vague if and you can be that way if it's with private insurance because you're less likely to get audited, like Eileen was saying. So practice I work for does not take Medicaid at all. But yeah, it's a very like very like standard template and you can actually say like very little because if talking to my supervisor, if I was audited, you go back through kind of like you were saying and redact a bunch of things from notes, and you can just send like a summary letter if you do get audited. It's especially nice if you work with private insurance because you can leave the notes pretty vague already. But yes, there's a very small template that's just like, here are the things that you need in the box. My supervisor says to write 2 to 3 sentences, and most people at the practice I work at do. It's surprising how little you actually need for private insurance. I thought you would need more, but folks, it just depends on who you are, and if you want to add more or not, but you actually don't need a ton.
And you had the reassurance of your employer too, Hannah, that if anything came up with an audit, that they would have your back legally, not just like we've got you, but like that they would actually have your back legally as well.
Yeah, so my supervisor was actually audited at one point and told me kind of how that went. They were audited within the practice that I work at, and they said, yep, you just tell them that you don't have that information. And also when it comes to like diagnoses and things, because their insurance companies auditing you, she's very supportive in saying, we're the mental health professionals. You can just say like this person needs therapy. It was a similar situation to what Eileen was describing where insurance like, well, we don't think this person needs therapy. She gave them a call and they wanted all the notes. They said, actually, they do. Here is why, and that was sufficient. So they didn't actually have to deliver anything. So yeah, my supervisor is really awesome. She's very supportive. She said if you ever got audited, we would go through it, redact basically everything, and then just you say I am the mental health professional. They need therapy. You don't get to decide that. So yeah, very, very supportive. I was surprised because I was very nervous about it. But yeah, she was audited by I believe it was Kaiser. And just had a quick phone call. I was like, no, they need counseling. And then that was it.
This is like the best case scenario of
Yeah,
like
it
working with
was.
insurance and then how much support you've gotten as well. Rafaela, do you have other things on your list that are naturally coming up? Or are there other questions that folks want to know about?
Well, something I think a lot of people are kind of wondering about and worried about is like we kind of briefly mentioned earlier, getting clients once they start their private practice. So I wondered if you had tips for that or how you went about it, getting clients and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Like even how to advertise yourself online and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it varies like person to person, just it really depends on the kind of practitioner you are and like I think that uh I feel like, it takes probably like now 2 years like in general to like really fill a practice and feel very stable in it. Um I uh like for me, I like got lucky with that and I think, my practice felt pretty full like within a year. But I did do EMDR training like pretty soon after I graduated, and I think that that helped a lot. And yeah, I mean, I had the therapy done, and I had the Psychology Today profiles set up from the start. I think that having those set up before, because I was getting clients through IHI through my Psych Today profile when I was an intern, I already had it kind of developed. And I think that that helped too, because I already had some people who had like done testimonials on there, and it just felt like a developed page. It wasn't like just a new profile. It was like you could tell I had been on there for a bit, maybe. And yeah, I think that having a lot of people like, read your what you're writing on Psych Today is helpful. I think like that's people's main impression, even just the first word, like the first sentence, like really thinking about like what people are reading and like what's drawing them in. I think people can get really technical about stuff, and especially in that first paragraph, like you just want to like humanize yourself. And like your picture, I think all these like little bits of details, like they make a difference in like how people, because they're just going through this like list of a bunch of profiles. Like, they want somebody that they can feel like they really connect with. And I think a big part of that too is the niche. Like, I think I noticed like from the people that had a really hard time filling their practice, they were like casting a very wide net, and that doesn't work very well. Like they thought like, oh, I'll just take anyone who comes, but then you're just another one you're just another one of the profiles, and like there's nothing that stands out. So I think like I had a very, very specific niche, and I have like a very, very specific approach, like I do the EMDR, I do the IFS, I do the trauma. Like I'm not like wide net. And I think that worked. And yeah, the consults, like a lot of things, that something that will happen a lot with people is that they'll get like somebody reaching out, and then they'll like reach back out to them, and then they'll be ghosted. Like they'll never like actually have this client. And that has a lot to do with like the kind of intensity that you meet them with. I think that if you're like, oh, okay, like here, you're throwing all this information at them, and you're like, this is how this is going to go, and blah blah, it's like they're just like already overwhelmed when they're reaching out to you. So just to like, you're just setting up a time to like chat on the phone, and you're just catching a vibe. Like you're just like, it's not like, you don't be so professional and like uptight, and like, just relax and like talk to them like a human. And just like see how because a lot of people are like, they're reaching out a bunch of people, and they're not going to really remember what you even say. What they're going to remember is how they felt when they were on the call with you. So just like, yeah, just like bring yourself to the room, to the phone call, into the room when you're with these people. And that's what they're going to be picking, is like you and your essence and how they feel with you, not so much like all this other stuff. Yeah.
No clients have any idea what the word modality means. And we use it so much in healthcare. And they're just like, what is a modality? It's like how I like to work with my clients, instead of saying like, do not use the word modality in your description, just because it only makes sense to people in healthcare, and it already leaves them out of the conversation.
Yeah. And yeah. And when you're like, when you're, I guess, yeah, I would keep that. Yeah, I think that when you're describing it to them, like to just, I think it's not even so much about like what it is that when I say, oh, like, make sure you know what your modality, your approach is and your niches. it's not so much about like so that you can very clearly explain that to them, which is important, but it's more so that you have that confidence is what I'm like you want to know like clearly what it is that you're doing.
Yeah,
Like
like
this,
modalities make sense to us and we can talk to each other about it when we're referring and everything else. But it's like, okay, Eileen, if you're saying I practice a humanistic approach, like what does that mean to your client? Well, it might look more like conversational and it might not feel like, you're getting analyzed by a human being who you just met. It might be more organic. It might be, so just like having ways to talk to people about what it might feel like to have a conversation with you instead of like I do these things. Obviously, people are looking for EMDR though. So that's a specific like call it out. Sometimes they are looking for CBT or DBT, but oftentimes they're not going to be like, I need a humanistic approach counselor, right?
want to know that they want to feel that you are really really confident in your and like I know that like what I'm providing is like to me the gold standard and I know like having you want to feel like a pillar to them when they're feeling so like it's really helpful and I think that sometimes at the beginning of the practice you're like still trying to pull from like you're like oh well I think that this is like my number one and this is my number two and these are my things but you're like still trying to pull in and accommodate to every client and be like oh well yeah like that but just having like a very clear for yourself to show up with that clarity is helpful. I think that's a big thing.
Elizabeth has joined us too. Elizabeth, if you have any questions, please feel free to jump in. This is a great opportunity to pick the brains of some people who have just ever so recently been where you are now.
I don't really have any questions right now, but hi.
Hi. Rafaela, what else is on your list? You've got a juicy list over there that I know you've put some thought into.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, like if I were to like start over, I think having more, I didn't really realize it at the time, which is part of the problem, but like now that I'm in the practice, I'm, really valuing and feeling like it's almost necessary to have longer sessions, like 75 to 100-minute sessions are like what I'm moving toward. And the 50 minutes or like the hour is just not enough most of the time, the majority of the time. And also like the quote unquote 10-minute break between like booking back to back, where you're like, oh, it's a 50 minutes, you have 10 minutes, but that doesn't happen. Like you're not gonna have that 10 minutes. And so like I think that thinking about how you want to structure your practice from the get-go, like I think it was Larissa when I first started. Larissa was like, I'm going to take Fridays off and I'm going to make sure it's Monday through Thursday only. I was like, whoa, that's like, wow, that's amazing. And she was like, you need to do that. Like, I just like she really pushed it and I'm so glad that she did because like if I was like, well, I just want to broaden, I want to make sure that like no matter what, like what if a client can't see me? What if they have to see him on a Friday? I don't want to like reject them because I need the money. But in the end, if I had started taking them on Fridays, I would have, like so just being like these are the days I want to work, these are the hours I want to work, trying to set your own parameters because once you're in private practice, if you don't have those boundaries for yourself, they're going to be everywhere all over the place and you're going to be like it's going to be really hard. So thinking about how long do I really want? How long do I want between my clients? And creating a schedule that works that way so that when you're like somebody calls you up, you can be like, I can offer you a 1 p.m. or a 2:30 so that you have that if you wanted a 30-minute break instead of making a mess of your schedule and then having to somehow fix it later, which is impossible. It's like it's taken me a year to just like begin to restructure my practice in a way slowly to like be able to have these 75 minutes and 100-minute sessions in a way that works and is fluid. And eventually I'd like to have that be my entire, like all of my sessions are more than an hour. So yeah, so think about how you want to structure it, how much time you want between, and start off that way. Don't just think you'll get there one day.
I second this enthusiastically because when I started, I only had like 3 clients a week. So all those clients got a 3-hour appointment because I didn't have anything else going on. And it was really hard to get them to unlearn that. And so then it's so much easier to be very rigid in the beginning and then loosen up as you realize you need flexibility than to start flexible and then try to get rigid. So I second it, like putting a 90-minute lunch break in there, putting in, a 4-hour block of admin time per week, all of those things, scheduling all of those pieces out, and then really making sure that you maybe underestimate how many clients you're going to see per week, because you might find that it's quickly overwhelming. And that, again, like it would be hard to like reverse engineer that. So starting out with more rigidity, I totally second that.
Yeah, that's the other thing that happened to I didn't set up parameters around the hours I wanted to work, and I just kept going later and later and later, and then eventually I was leaving the office almost every day at 8 p.m. and I was like working these crazy basically these 10-hour days, and it's taken me a long time. I still like leave sometimes. I leave I leave pretty often still at like 7 p.m. but like it's taken me 6 months, like, or more than that. Honestly, I think it's been like 9 months since I like really shut down I was like, I had like a wait list thing that wasn't really working because then like I felt bad because they were waiting, and then I just put them on. I just like, as soon as there was like any kind of an opening, or even I just like add them on at the end of the day or something. And it's just like, that wasn't working. So I just totally was like, I'm not taking anyone else at all. And so it took me like 9 months, and then of like slowly letting people go within those 9 months, to now where I'm like starting to leave at 6 and 7 instead of 8 p.m. And it's like,
Val, are you there? Oh,
yes,
sorry.
no, you go ahead.
Oh no, you were frozen for a second there, so I was just making sure that you were still there. That was all. Go ahead.
Yeah. Yeah. Where did I leave off? Did I?
That you were leaving at 8 now instead of like trying to leave at 7 or something instead of like 8 or 9, or like pushing it later. So it's like still so much rigidity.
Yeah, long time, essentially. It takes a long time to do that, to actually step back. So like, yeah, just to start from the beginning on your like boundaries.
Cash pay, how did you choose your pay scale?
So yeah, that's the other thing, is trying to figure out how you want to charge. How I figured it out was based off values, and I was like, I don't want to have the typical like sliding scale model, which is like what, most private practice, I mean, everybody does. I think it's even like in the guide of ethics that you have to have some sliding scale spots. And so what most people do is that they have like a couple, like 5 spots that are sliding scale spots, and people will like give their information, and then you'll tell them what it is that they'll pay based off of how much they like make and stuff like that. And what that does is that then once those 5 spots are filled, which they fill up really, really quickly, you've got all these people reaching out to you being like, I need a sliding scale spot, and you have to keep saying no, 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 or putting them on a wait list. And so that's what ends up happening is like everybody who's looking for therapy is like, I'm reaching out this person who says they have sliding scale, and I can't see anyone because everybody's rejecting me. And so like I wanted a model that no matter what always had sliding scale, like you can always pick. And a lot of people were like, that's not going to work. I mean, it's the same with IHI. Like, it's like, that's the same model. I actually like told IHI about that model. It's called the green bottle method. Because yeah, like it just like people were like, there's no way that, you know, that people aren't going, if they can choose, they're not going to always choose the tier 1, which is like the lowest tier. They're not going to always just choose tier 1 because it's the cheapest. And I was like, no, like I think that people will feel like empowered in being able to like help other people go to therapy if they can choose a higher tier. And so that's in the model. It's like in the paperwork, it's all explained, and I'll explain that to people in the first session as well. So we actually just every year in June, our collective like reassesses the tiers and like how are they working, and we'll send out, you know, either a refreshed like form for people to pick a different tier if they feel like the one that they had picked a year ago doesn't fit for them anymore, or you know like we'll do something also like with the like changing the tiers just like as inflation moves and stuff like that. And so now we have 4 tiers, and it's starts at 85. So 85 is like the lowest tier, and then 125, 150, and then 175. And you know, industry standard is like 180, so 180 per session. That's what I pay for therapy from my private practice therapist, and I didn't get a choice. So it's like that's how it's usually about 150 to 200 is like the industry standard. So we wanted to try to match like our top tier, which is like what you're paying if you have extra funds and you want to help the people in the lower tiers, have it be more industry standard at the top tier.
Hannah has to drop off, but she dropped her email in there. So Hannah R. Gallo at gmail.com. And we will miss having Hannah as part of this conversation. So if anything else comes up, like for sure, reach out. One of the things that I wanted to say about Larissa and Rafaela when they were graduating and they were setting their fee schedules, I was like, what's the bottom fee? And they were like $25. And I was like, why are you trying to compete with IHI for the biggest discounts? Like, why don't you set your bottom where our top is? Because then we have this continuum all the way from people who can pay 0 to 85 within IHI, and then 85 and above, and then up to still like lower than the average rate at their top. It just it makes a lot of sense for that continuum. But I'm like, you don't have, yes, it's wonderful to give like pro bono services or sliding scale or something in your private practice, but especially your first couple of years, you may not be in a position to give anything. And so just knowing that you have to resource yourself before you feel like you can resource others, and that's why IHI exists, is charity, right? So it's like, everybody throw your charity over in the charity bucket so that we can try to protect ourselves and resource ourselves in private practice. So I know it's all fluid, but that's my advice. Don't set your tier at $25. There's no reason to for private practice, right? Yeah. And yes, the green bottle method, I think, has been the most successful, like a pay what you can approach. It helps if you have invoicing going on a regular basis. But I think that it's great. Like with your collective, do you guys share like payment systems or Wi-Fi or overhead? Like, what do you do? Oh, sorry, you're muted.
Sorry, I lost you. What do we share? We share like the website fee. We share like business liability insurance. But like we have our own separate malpractice insurance. Like we share on advertising and stuff like that if we're gonna do a group practice advertising. But Mostly, yeah, mostly we're not sharing in the financial way. No. Right.
So you all have your own like EHR that you've chosen for yourselves. You all have your own payment systems or scheduling systems. They're all separate and broken out.
Oh, we have, in terms of our payment, like our model, so like our tiers.
No, like how you actually receive a payment.
Oh yeah, that's all separate. Yeah, it's like our own businesses completely. Our own businesses completely, and like we each have our own PLLC or S corp or whatever it is, and yeah, it just is like, it's really just more of like a shared, our collective is like the farthest thing away from a group practice. We don't do any like pooling of the funds or anything like that. It's all just really a mutual support network.
And like decision making, you do some of the decision making. Like so everybody agrees to the same kind of payment tiers. So there are some things from the outside that make you look like a consistent, like the same business across the board, like in how you're setting your payment tiers and things like that. But then each of you, like you said, maintains your own business.
Right, like the payment tiers, yeah, that's something we talk about consistently, and we have like meetings, and we just, we discuss our values and how we're like upholding those, and other ways we can, like new ways we can. And it's yeah, the tier, and yeah, with the tiers, like we just had that discussion because we're renewing them in June like we always do. So um it's just a conversation, and we like do a lot of voting, and then when we have like whoever is like, we won't just like go with that vote, whoever's the popular vote, we'll like, whoever didn't vote for the popular vote, will like really talk through that, and it's like consensus, it's really truly a collective, and we really try to lean away from any hierarchy.
And you said you're changing the length of your appointments. Are you changing your fee schedule to match that then?
So that's how I just go, it's like time, and it's like I just add it. So it's like a full session, 60 minutes is the tier, it'd be like tier 1, and then I would just do tier 1 plus, the extra quarter or the extra half or the extra full. It just is like, I don't have a whole separate tier model for that. It's just like I just add whatever it is, that we add in terms of time.
Which program are you using for scheduling, EHR, and payment processing?
It's all in private practice, which is why I love private practice, because it's like all encompassing. I don't use anything else.
That's great. Eileen, were you using Square Up for payment for private practice, or what have you been using? A paper schedule.
I was using Square or point of sale or whatever they call it. I still use it for some clients because it does generate an invoice. But when I'm working with people on the East Coast, they don't need an invoice because they're not going to be reimbursed for my services. And a lot of them just Venmo me.
Your educational consultations with the people on the East Coast, you mean?
Yes.
Only education. I think programs like Calendly will connect to Square. They'll still take their fee off the top, but those are free systems. And so it's free to set up, free to use. And so Calendly is like scheduling, but then you can create services so that if you're looking for something that's very low cost, and then you can always move over to a different system that works better for you. But you said private practice is the one that you use, Rafaela. Is that counseling specific, or is it just for people who have small practices?
I think she's talking about simple practice.
Yeah, sorry, did I say something else? I
think you said private practice. I knew what you were talking about.
Yeah,
simple practice.
Thank you. Yeah, simple practice. Is yeah, I think it's just for therapists. Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Does it have chart note templates in it that are good for both, do whatever you want when you're seeing your clients as well as for working with insurance?
Yeah. Yeah, they have a
Awesome.
whole, if you wanted to work with insurance, they have a whole insurance like setup and all that too. It's like it's like it's gold standard in terms of like the EHRs there are out there. So I would just it's worth it. The money's worth it.
And the only reason we didn't go with it was to have just one system, which is Charm. But Charm is much more difficult than Simple Practice.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
Yeah, charm is the devil that we know. And so it definitely has things like integrated payment systems in it. And if you're a solo practitioner using charm, it's not until you have like over 50 charts a month that you have to pay. And so charm can be free if you're really little, but then also thinking about what's easy to switch away from if you wanted to change. So charm can be free if you have a low enough patient load. But as soon as you get to like full patient load, then it can start adding up. They'll charge per clinician, and then like per chart over a certain point. But if you're like, yeah, I'm going to keep it to 15 people a week, you might not pay anything for that. And then you just pay for the telehealth integration, which is only $20 a month. What else is on your list, Rafaela? We have until 7:30, right?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So once you got your license, right? Like when did you start your private practice? Like did you wait for some time or did you like start your process immediately? Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, I did it. Larissa and I were talking about the collective and the idea of it like before we graduated, and we had like committed to the idea and started to put together paperwork and everything before we even graduated. And then as soon as we graduated, we like applied for the business license and we did all the things. And I think, yeah, we just started, it was pretty smooth transition because we were already seeing clients through IHI that were like, didn't find IHI because they needed to financially. They found IHI just because it was convenient. And so like the clients that couldn't pay would stay with IHI. And then we already had some clients that we could switch over to private practice. And we just went ahead and like, yeah, we just started.
That's an excellent point too, is that the most sacred relationship in all of this is the client and practitioner. And so if you go somewhere that does accept insurance and your client wants to use insurance and you have a good relationship or connection, you can take your clients from IHI with you elsewhere. And so we don't have any sort of like non-competes or anything like that. It's more like wanting to have those long-term relationships that are, have been established and so much work has gone into them. And it's like, yeah, if your client doesn't need a discount, you're welcome to take them with you. If they don't need to stay with IHI for whatever reason, like take your clients with you, because that's definitely like how you can have a few clients to start with, get your foot in the door. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a question. I do know there's like a waiting period, like after you apply for your associates. So I'm curious what happens during that time. Like some people talk about like 3 months, 2 to 3 months. So did you guys go ahead with the collective? Did you see clients during that period? What was that like?
Yeah, that was a unique situation because we were still covered under Eileen's malpractice and all that, and her business, because we were still seeing clients through IHI. If we had completely went out on our own, that wouldn't have been possible. But if, there are group practices that are willing to do that, like the way, you know, let you come in as a pre-licensed professional. That's how you would advertise. That's how we advertised on the website. How we advertised on Psych Today is we had pre-licensed professional, and we started taking because people they don't even know what that means. They don't care. They just want a therapist, and so people were reaching out already. So if you have somebody who's willing to like do that for you, then that would be possible. Otherwise, you do have to wait. Yeah.
Thank you.
Lakshmi, didn't Lakshmi get new information? Sorry, Eileen, go ahead.
I heard from Rebecca that somebody just applied and got their license in 3 weeks.
Really? Yeah, I do know a bunch of people who've already applied. I guess it must be Grace then.
I don't know, but one of the things that I would tell you is if you want it fast, go to Olympia. Drive down there, hang out in their lobby.
Yeah.
I did that once and they renewed my license almost immediately. But it
Yeah.
seems like they're catching up.
Yeah. For me, it's critical that I don't have that gap in a sense. I'm quite undecided in that sense, but I feel like it can kind of like hold you back in a way from what you want to do. Well, yeah, if it takes me, if I need to drive down to Tumwater, yeah, why not? I've heard from other people from Bastyr, from I think last cohort, the same thing, like the departments are like different silos, like it might not reach the right people, and you might have to actually step in or drive down and kind of like, you know, have that conversation. Oh, here are my transcripts, and okay. And just kind of like get that movement across departments. I've heard that too. So yeah, just throwing out some, yeah.
I did check their current processing dates just before I hopped on this call, right? So they have caught up, right? Earlier it was like 2 months prior to the current date, but now it's like just 3 weeks. So it does look like they are catching up. So I think it's around like end of March or April 1st is their current processing date. So if you apply during that time, you're likely to get it in 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So I think the last time I did speak to them about it, they were short staffed. They had a lot of things happening. They were changing their system, so there was a lot of freeze going on. So now it's like they're processing things much faster. So that's one of the things. And the second thing is that I did attend the webinar by the Washington Counseling Association. So what they mention is that like there's a lot of places that do take in pre-licensed clinicians, right? So they are aware of the process, so they're fine with it. Having said that, I don't know. I mean, I know it might not apply to you, but the health department, Washington Health Department does know about it, right? Starting October 1st, you can practice without a license under your supervisor for 120 days while you wait for your license. So this is a rule that they have actually like started from like October 1st. So they are aware of it. So, and a lot of like places like I had this discussion with Hannah as well, like her organization also was very accommodative of it. And then she did recommend other things that we were talking about, and they all have it on their job description, that says it's okay if you're pre-licensed. We do understand the whole process. So yeah, a lot of people are like aware of it.
Okay.
I think it was I did speak to Angela, if I'm getting her name right, but she was telling me that she did drive down to Olympia and said, these are my transcripts. Tell me that you have my transcripts and you have everything to process my application. Tell me that right now. So she was mentioning that she did it because she did not want to like wait or anything like that. Yeah.
Thank you for the update. That's really helpful. I hope I can continue with the pre-licensed professional status on Psych Today. And I'm hoping Eileen would be okay having her as a supervisor. Thank you. Thank you, guys. That was really helpful.
Lakshmi, was that October 1st this year or October 1st last year that they're changing it officially?
Oh, it's October 1st this year, unfortunately. Yeah.
But at least they recognize, and they're saying, oh, there's this gap where people are supposed to build a practice in theory, but then you can't practice yet. And so at least they're saying that's ridiculous. Just practice. Go out and practice,
Yeah.
knowing that your license is coming.
Yeah, I think in 120 days, almost like 4 months, right? That's a good time for them to like process it as well. Like, I think they did have, like, I did speak to a lot of people who applied last year, and I think they did have like a lot of backlog from like what happened during the COVID time. So they were trying to do like a lot of catching up thing, but they have changed a lot of their systems and they're trying to be more reduce the wait times. Yeah. But I think one of the things that I would definitely like say, what we discussed with Hannah is that like calling them and asking them like, do you have everything? If you do apply online and you're sending in your transcripts, right? Most of the times they do have everything. They just need that push to say that, oh yeah, I do have everything. So for me, I think I was waiting, and the minute I called them, they just started processing everything very quickly. And my case was very different. I have two of my degrees from India and one from here, so it was very different. But I didn't, everything happened for me, and I did not get my license. And I think I just called them and asked them like what's happening. And 20 minutes after that call, they had actually sent me the license saying, I don't know why didn't we didn't issue it. So they're like really helpful and they are very communicative. Yeah.
Anything else on your list, Raphael?
I think just the intake forms, like they don't have to be so in depth. I think that it's like it can be overwhelming for clients to just like have all of this like, paperwork. It's just like, and you're not even really gonna like, what are you really getting? You're just, it's like, I just have them, give them, I would just talk them through some of the stuff, like really generally summarize it so that, and then obviously give them the paperwork so that they can read it if they want to, but really trying to make that as a chill of a process as possible, and don't make like an insane intake form where like they're having to like write all this stuff. It's just like ridiculous. Like just like just talk to them, and try to gather some of that on your own. I can share, my intake forms and stuff like that and what that looks like for me. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like, I've been trying to find a new therapist for like, or not a new therapist, just a good therapist. Like, it's hard to find a good therapist, actually. Hard to find one. And so, like, I've been looking for one, since I've been in Seattle. Like, I've been through like a couple, like four now. And all of them, especially this last one, I was like, this isn't the paperwork is just crazy. And none of it was relevant in the end. Like, we've never, so I just, yeah. So figure out how to really condense and like streamline your intake paperwork, and really just try to be as personable as possible. Like, you're not just get all that like medical stuff out of, out of the picture as much as you can.
Do you still have like clinic policies and like consent for treatment, and then still like contact information, emergency contact, right? But then beyond that, you're just like not asking them to tell you their medical history. Do you ask them about medications or pre-existing diagnoses or anything that you think you should be aware of?
No. I asked them about some stuff in the intake form, but I'm not like talking about diagnosis, and that's not something I engage in at all anyway.
Yeah.
The only time that I do diagnosis is when somebody needs one for something like, getting if they want to get their, you know, super bills is the number one thing people need it for, is like just to get some reimbursement from their insurance. And when that happens, I'll, like, you know, I'll reiterate my position on diagnoses. We'll talk through like what it is that they would like, if they would like a diagnosis that really reflects what they feel is happening, or if they want to just do something like adjustment disorder, that you know. So we'll have that conversation. I'll give them what they want. But I have, you know, I have like a specific adult intake form, couples intake form, minors intake form. Then I have like the informed consent that includes like practice policies and the HIPAA stuff, the release of information. And yeah, it's all kind of like condensed, instead of there being a bunch of different documents that you're signing over and over and over and over again. It's kind of just like very simple. So people can reach out if they want to talk about that with me.
So Emily definitely would love to see the intake forms. I would love to too, because I feel like I could really learn something from you in this moment. Yeah, I definitely think that that's great to encourage more conversation and less of the like deep documentation of all things. What about your super bill? How do you create that, or does your system create it, or have a template for it?
Yeah, the system creates it, so I just have to click on which sessions I want, and then it creates it for me. Yeah.
Has everybody heard this term before, super bill or coded bill? Everybody familiar with that? Because I can definitely help with the details of something like that. Mom, do you do super bills at all?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
In
And so
fact, between myself and Kimberly, we set that up. Hallie and Casey both know how to do super bills, mostly Casey. So if somebody comes to IHI and needs a super bill, Casey can do it.
Mhm. So it's like it will have Eileen's information then on it as the clinician, because she's the supervisor with her license, the tax ID of IHI, diagnosis codes, and then the visit code, the CPT code or the procedure code, right? And then how much they paid, or how much it cost, how much they paid. So it's like the proof of payment. So then when they go to seek reimbursement, they have proof that they paid that amount. So that's kind of why people might want it. So it's more if you're not in network with that insurance company, or you don't do insurance at all, you're just cash pay, then super bills tend to come up much more often, where people are trying to recoup some of the expense if they can. Anything else? Oh, great.
I just sent just the Google Doc. It's like, you know, will that work? Could you just?
I can click on it and access it. Yeah. Great. That's huge. And HSPO is the company that offers malpractice and liability insurance together, Rafaela?
Yeah, they have, but yeah.
Great. Ooh, systematize. This will be the last time that you have this quantity of free time, is what and this is a lot to say for people who are going to school and doing practicum at the same time. This is probably the last moment that you'll have a minute to think about some of these things. So if you are starting a process or creating a process, to even like, you know, audio record what your process is as you're establishing these processes, because oftentimes we get so busy that we don't circle back around to checking them later. So yeah, that's the reality. Great. Consent forms. And then the ages for, you all know this, the ages for youth, Rafaela, is that 13 and above that they have? Okay. I see heads nodding. That's good. I'm always like, was it 14 or 13? So heads nodding. Great. 13. Decide your schedule and set it. Payment model. Great. Anything else? Any open questions? Anybody else have anything?
I have a quick question. Did you wait for your associate's license to come through to register for like PLLC license? Was it, or did you start that simultaneously? Or
Yeah, simultaneously. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like before you even graduated, you were already working on that. So
Yeah.
business.
Mhm.
Was it like $60 to start your business in the state of Washington?
Those are the details I can't find.
It's a Department of Secretary of State, and the Department of Revenue is who you do like state taxes through. But I think the Secretary of State is where you start for starting your business. And so like choosing, which type of business model you want, what the name is, other doing business as, who the officers are if you have officers. And so you declare all of that, and then basically you have a business license, like when you're done with that process, and it's online. And I believe it was like $60 or something. So not terrible. It's harder to make the decisions than to actually like do the application.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, pretty straightforward for that. Anything else?
I have a question for Rafaela. Like, are your intake forms also in this link, or would you? How can we?
I'm gonna have to figure out yeah, I'll figure out how to share them with you because right now they're like all in my simple practice. And so if I were to like there's a lot of pieces of it that you wouldn't be able to see if I like print like kind of download them as a PDF and sent it, just because of the way it's like formatted through the website. So I'm gonna have to figure out a different way, but I'll figure it out and I'll send it to you.
And I think the other question I had is like, I do agree that your Psychology Today profile looks really nice, right? Like, so how did you go about like getting reviews written and like building on that?
Um, uh, that takes time. That's why I said, like I think starting with my psych today early. That's why I told the interns, I was like, maybe just get your psych today now, because then like you just start to build those. It takes just some time. But if just like anybody in your network that you like feel like you want to write a review for, oftentimes people will write back. So if you are on Psych Today and you see, like, if you have anybody in your network that that is on, you can write reviews for them, and then they'll write back for you too.
A follow-up question to that is like you had your Psych Today profile even before you started your private practice and got your license, right? Like from the time you were an intern, that's what you mentioned, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I did.
So then, do you like set up like information where clients can find you and come to IHI? Is that it?
You mean on the Psych Today?
That's right, in the beginning, right? When you did not start your private practice, yeah.
Oh, before I started my private practice. Yes, yes. I had it set up so that it was connected to the Inside Health Institute website.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we are at time and it's recorded. Thank you so much. This was amazing. Um, And we do have like so there is an email link which I sent for this entire Zoom thing. So if you have any questions, you can probably send it to the same email. So there's a thread and we can see if we can get an answer from someone.
And I can try to prepare a document that's like sole proprietorship, LLC, PLLC, S Corp, that at least has like a little tidbit for each of those pieces to see if I can get you more recent information.
Yeah, so Emily, Tara, and Elizabeth, did you have anything to add before we close?
This was wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Rafaela, for your time and all adding so much. That was really helpful for everyone and me. So yeah.
Well, I'll be around. I'm around, so I'm always down to help with anything whenever.
Thank you all so much. This is really, yeah, if we had the ability to ask these questions back when we were graduating, this it would have been very enlightening. So I really appreciate all of you showing up and speaking to your experience. And then for everybody else to be able to show up and ask questions, and like Lakshmi said, just keep questions coming so that you feel more resourced as you're getting closer and closer to graduation or at graduation, as the case may be. Right. Thank you all. Love having community with you. I'm going to close the meeting. Bye.
Bye.
Christine, did you want to like stay back or you want